Welcome back. You are watching CNBC-TV18 and our focus today is on India's electric vehicle ecosystem and on Ola Electric. Ola Electric, which is leading the electric vehicle market in two-wheelers right now. The company has just increased prices in the range of 10 to 12,000 rupees across its model range, and this will be across India. And there could be some differences because of the subsidy structure in your city. But this price increase has happened because the government has recently slashed subsidies for electric two-wheelers from 40% of the vehicle cost to 15% of the vehicle cost. And all electric vehicle makers are evaluating a price increase at the moment. Bajaj Auto had told us yesterday that this slashing of subsidies could retard growth for some extent, at least for a few months. Let's ask Ola Electric, what are their plans in terms of production, whether the slashing of subsidies will reduce their growth that they have been seeing over the last few months, and their plans for an IPO in early 2024, as is being speculated in the media. Joining us right now is the company's CFO, Arun Kumar. Arun, thank you very much for joining us. Let me begin by asking you about the news coming in. Ola revising prices. What has been the percentage increase, and will you be taking more increases in the coming months?
I think the first thing I want to share with you, Parikshit, is that as we are in the market in the last 3 months, right, when we meet customers, when we talk to our customers, one thing is very, very clear in electric. It is absolutely at an inflection point in the market. So the customers are, a year ago, were curious about electric. They wanted to test the products, ride the products, drive the products. But today it's an absolutely real decision. We want brand X or brand Y, or absolutely understand what is the cost of ownership between an ICE and an electric. So the revolution is on, and the inflection point is absolutely on. So all these discussions we tend to have, FAME has been reduced, or will there be a price increase or a decrease? What happens to the overall? It's only one direction where this market is going. It is absolutely exponential volume growth because consumers have clearly started preferring electric to ICE vehicles. So the current FAME discussion that is going on live, I think is in absolutely the right direction. The government has done its bit. It has seeded the industry. It has encouraged the customers. It has created the habit, and it has been an equal partner with OEMs like ourselves in ensuring that the penetration and the inflection point arrives. When we all see that the point has arrived, the next thing that is normal is phasing out of subsidies, and in a manner that the government has chosen an intelligent manner to phase it down, and it will not last forever. So the onus is on the manufacturers and the OEMs to ensure that they have the right supply chains and the right cost structures and the right product features so that the customer experience and safety is always the primary in the minds of the OEMs. And given that this is a revolution where there is no stopping back at all, it's important that the players who have not yet launched electric vehicles, it's an absolute wake-up call to the entire industry that the revolution is happening. Get ready and get fit or fast. So we really welcome the move. There is a price increase. It will have no impact on the volumes is our base case.
Okay, so you're saying it won't have an impact on your volumes, but could you give us the revised prices of Ola electric scooters across the country? We have been getting to know that the price increase will be in the range of 10 to 12,000. What will be the exact percentage increase? How much will the scooters cost now?
You heard broadly right, and it's a very nominal price increase, if at all. The more important thing for me is that during this next 6 months, we are now an absolute full house on the scooters, right? As far as we are concerned, there are another 3 models coming out in the market. One of them is already announced, which is S1 Air, which is being delivered by the end of June. We will start production mid-June and start deliveries, which is an extremely anticipated model. We're already sitting on close to 100,000 pre-bookings. And S1 Air is a game-changing product because very clearly it addresses the mid-market range in terms of price. And if you take the cost of ownership versus an ICE brand, which is the biggest selling brand today at that price range, then it's a hands-down winner, right? Because even if you take a EMI, 2/3 of the EMI is automatically funded by savings in fuel costs. So the cost of ownership is so low for the customer, and the customer has already adopted electric as a way. Today in India, 1 out of every 5 scooters is an electric scooter that's being sold. In a place like Bangalore or Pune, it's almost 1 out of every 2 scooters. So that's how it is. The other 2 products that I talked about will address other price points, and we will certainly share them at the right time. What is also aware in the market is that we are ready with our motorcycles. So these will be announced at the right time, and you will see that early 2024 will be the year of motorcycles, right? Which really means by that time we are addressing the complete TAM of 20 million vehicles. And with the penetration and the revolution, which is absolutely real, it's going to be absolutely customer-centric, contemporary industry that is maturing very fast.
Right. So you're saying 2 more products, apart from the 3 that you have in your portfolio right now, for 2023, and in 2024 will be the year of motorcycles for Ola Electric. Coming to IPO plans, widely speculated in the media since yesterday, early 2024, Ola Electric is going to come with an IPO. Could you give us a sense of the kind of valuation you're looking for, Arun, and what will be some of the deciding factors before you go in for this exercise?
See, I will not comment on such speculation, right? But typically, when companies like ourselves attain scale, and what is also well known is that we are launching a Gen 2 of the production range, which is significantly far more cost efficient than the Gen 1 platform, as well as more energy efficient. All my current products, as well as S1 Air, will transition into Gen 2 from mid-June, as I mentioned earlier. So when companies reach scale and there's a revolution in this space, when people see that volumes will be compounding exponentially rather than sort of a run rate of volumes, then and with impending profitability, say in EBITDA level profitability, then all these kind of things always lead to such rumors and speculation. So it is not appropriate to comment on it, but it is indicative of the strength of the company, and such speculation tends to happen. So if and when there are any solid plans, we will absolutely be the first to share it with the regulatory authorities first, the media next, and our stakeholders and investors at large next.
But the plan is being seriously evaluated at the management level for 2024 for an IPO?
See, these are not things we can comment on whether seriously evaluated or not. Every company at any point of time will evaluate capital actions, they will evaluate M&As, they will evaluate business development, partnerships. So it's a normal thing in a company, right? The issue is not what happens inside the company. The issue is if and when a company decides, it has to formally communicate it first to regulatory authorities. So we should never speculate about these things in the media or otherwise.
All right. My final question, Arun, give us a sense of what are you expecting from FAME 3? Right now, the extension that has happened, the additional allocation of 1,500 crores for electric two-wheelers, that is till March 2024. FAME ends next year. What has been your recommendation to the government when it comes to the next stage of subsidies for electric vehicles?
Well, the first question
that is if there is a FAME 3.
Yeah, I was just going to answer your question with the same comment, right? Firstly, do we need a FAME 3 is the first question. Second question is we don't know if there is a FAME 3. Third is if FAME 3 is not there, it's fine. If FAME 3 is fine, very good. So the larger point here is not about fame. The larger point here is about different price points, different products of high quality for the customers, like we are launching. The cost strength that we have is very, very deep. As you know, we are a technology biased company. So we've gone broad on our technology and deep. For instance, our cell gigafactory is already under construction. And we will be the first company in this country to deliver a lithium-ion cell to the country. And this will be a huge step for India as an economy. So the own cells is again going to reduce costs further. So our ecosystem is built around a proper, logical, profitable business model that is not dependent on subsidies.
All right. All right. Arun, we've run out of time, but thank you very much for joining us, giving a sense of the price increases that Ola is going to announce and has announced, in fact, and their plans to IPO, plans for more investments and product plans as well. Thanks once again. We're going to take a short break, but don't go anywhere. We are reporting from the G20 Secretariat here in New Delhi. And in a short while from now, we will get you an exclusive interview with G20 Chief Coordinator Harshvardhan Shringla about the G20 meet in Srinagar and the logistical preparations for the leaders meeting in September. Don't go anywhere. That exclusive coming up. India is halfway through its G20 presidency and the ministerials are now starting to happen. The focus is on building consensus around critical economic issues of our time, starting from cryptocurrencies, resilient supply chains and debt restructuring as well. With us right now to speak about the logistical challenge that the G20 poses to India and the kind of outcomes Prime Minister Modi is looking at, we are joined by Harshvardhan Shringla, G20 Chief Coordinator for India. Mr. Shringla, thank you very much for joining us. You've just concluded a G20 meeting in Srinagar. Give us a sense of the kind of logistical challenge that was for the G20 Secretariat, the Indian government.
Well, Parikshit, you're right. We've just concluded an excellent G20 meeting in Srinagar. We've had very good participation. We've had very substantive discussions. I would say very meaningful outcomes. And I think most of all, the delegates seem to have thoroughly enjoyed their visit to Srinagar, one of our most iconic tourism destinations. We were able to also get the delegation to not only meet some of the dignitaries who were there, both from New Delhi as well as in Jammu and Kashmir itself, but also a wide cross-section of the people of Jammu and Kashmir representing different facets of both development and socio-economic policy. So they met craftsmen, they met women's self-help groups, they visited not only tourist locations like Shalimar Bagh and Pari Mahal, but also got a glimpse of the smart city that Srinagar has turned into. They visited the Polo Market, which was a newly constructed smart city area, which had underground cabling, underground sewerage, and underground water supply, excellent pedestrian walks. They also visited the Jhelum riverfront, which is, I would say, one of the best sites and facilities that any city can offer along the very, very beautiful Jhelum River. So I think all in all, the experience was quite a memorable one. And the feedback that we've got from many of the delegates has been, I would say, in our opinion, has made us feel very satisfied.
Right. The fact that you were able to pull off a G20 meeting in Srinagar, which is sensitive from a security point of, there was also maybe opposition from some countries like China, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, which did not participate. What message has India been able to send out?
So what is important is that we had, as I mentioned, excellent participation of most G20 countries. We have to keep in mind that not all G20 meetings have all representatives present. I mean, you have at the end of the day 250 meetings of the G20 track. It's, I think, quite logistically difficult to have every country in every meeting. But the fact remains that we had more representation in this meeting in Srinagar than we've had in the previous tourism working group meetings. I think most, as I said, most countries were represented, and there were some very good discussions. For us, what is important is that we were able to focus on the agenda and also, I think, draw attention to one of our most important tourist locations. After all, it was a tourism working group meeting. We were also kept in mind the Prime Minister's vision to host a G20 presidency which would be dealing with healing, harmony and hope, and to work as one family to create a new paradigm of human-centric globalization. That's our endeavor.
Right. As you mentioned earlier, we're halfway through our G20 presidency. In September, you've got the major leaders meeting that will take place in New Delhi. Give us a sense of the kind of preparations, the scale of the preparations for that.
So, as you mentioned, we are halfway through our presidency. We have done about 120 meetings in 46 different cities of our country. We're very satisfied with the range and spread of our meetings. Again, this is in keeping with the Prime Minister's vision that the G20 should not be confined to the capital alone, but should be held across the length and breadth of our country so that every citizen of India becomes a stakeholder in the G20 process. As we are now coming closer to the summit, obviously preparations for the summit are getting more attention. We have the convention center that is specially earmarked for the G20, which is coming up very well. We also have some 20 different agencies of the central government and the Delhi government working on different aspects of preparation for the G20, whether it is the paving of roads or it is beautification of the city. Many functional areas which need to be kept in mind are also being addressed. So I think preparations are in full swing, and as we come closer to the summit, we'll see a lot more efforts in that direction. There's also a lot of emphasis on areas like security, medical facilities. Just the other day, we had a meeting which was convened both by the Principal Secretary to the PM on many of the issues that are there, the Coordination Committee for the G20, and also by the Home Secretary on many of these aspects. So, as I said, preparations are taking place in earnest, and we will see more of that as we come closer to the summit.
Right, we've been seeing G20 giving a big boost to tourism as well. Give us a sense, when this meeting happens in Delhi, the kind of arrangements that would be made in terms of commuting or taking the guests from one location to other, taking delegates from one location to another, the number of hotels that are likely to be booked?
Well, logistically, it is a fairly daunting, I would say, challenge to host 40 plus delegations of the highest level possible. We also expect between 8 and 12,000 foreign visitors to come into Delhi at that time. Clearly, we will have to use as much of the hotel space that is available in the NCR region as possible. We'll also have to create corridors to enable, these carcades of the heads of state and government to come into the different venues of the G20 meeting. So it needs a lot of planning, a lot of organization, and a lot of logistical calibration well in advance of the summit. But you can be sure that we are gearing up, and our different partners, I would say, parts of the government that are working on the summit are absolutely geared up for this important event.
Right. Before the G20 kicked off, you had given us a sense that India would like every G20 meeting to have a cultural event, a cultural component very typical of that particular city. When the leaders, when heads of state, prime ministers arrive in New Delhi, would this be a one city function only, or would you like to show them another city for a cultural component?
So when it comes to the G20 summit, there is a certain precedent and pattern that is followed. Normally, this is the meetings are over a 1.5 days, so there is a limited amount of time available. You can imagine that leaders of these important countries also have a limited amount of time that they can spare for the G20 meeting. So we will confine our efforts to the capital. As I said, we've had meetings. We will have had 250 meetings or so across the length and breadth of our country. But the summit will be in the capital, and the entire gamut of activities, including a cultural program, would be in New Delhi itself.
Right. About taking forward the consensus reached at G7 to G20, a bridge from G7 to G20 and then to COP28. What are some of the deliverables that we would be hoping to achieve, which the Prime Minister is hoping to achieve?
Well, I think the discussions in the G7 were very important because the G7 members are an important component of the G20, and there are a lot of similarities in the priorities that the G7 have identified and those of the G20 under our presidency. Issues like food security, issues like debt servicing and debt relief, issues that relate to priorities to the developing world, especially Africa. These are areas that are commonalities that we'll pick up on. And there's a lot more to that I think we will be in touch with our colleagues in the G7 on. I mean, there is already a fair amount of I would say, exchanges between the G7 and the G20 Secretariat, between the substantive tracks of both our sides. And I think we will be working to get maximum traction for all of the issues under our presidency.
My final set of questions, sir. Do we expect consensus on the definition of startups? This is something that's very close to the Prime Minister's office as well.
Yes, I think if you see the website, there is already a draft definition up. It calls for comments from member states. And I think we are well onto that exercise. Keep in mind that Startup 20 is an Indian construct. We had initiated it. This is the first time Startup 20 is meeting under our presidency, and this will continue under future presidencies of the G20. So definition is important because it not only involves industry, but it also involves research, involves a range of actors that are involved with the startup industry, startup sector. And I think we are well on our way to attaining that important objective of a definition.
Right. When it comes to Global South, how are we wanting to position ourselves as the voice of the Global South? How would you like this to be put in the communique, in the leaders' communique, which is issued after the meeting in September?
Well, we are very clear that in our presidency of the G20, we not only represent the interests of our partners and interlocutors within the G20 and NVT countries, but also the larger international community. And of them, the developing world is very important, not only because, as our External Affairs Minister has said, India is perceived to be the voice of the Global South, but also because in today's day and age, many of the concerns that are there at the global level pertain specifically or impact adversely on the Global South. Whether it is inflation, whether it is the high costs of the import of food, fuel and fertilizers, whether it is the issue of indebtedness, I think all of this are primarily concerns of the Global South. We intend to use our presidency to articulate the views and concerns of the Global South. And in that context, as you recall, a structured engagement with the Global South has been undertaken at the level of our leadership. The Prime Minister himself was part of that exercise in January this year. And that enabled us to get a fairly clear view of what the developing world expects of us under our G20 presidency. And you can be sure that we will make sure that those concerns are heard loud and clear, and those are actually articulated in the outcomes that the G20 seeks to achieve under our presidency.
Mr. Shringla, thank you so much for speaking to CNBC-TV18.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you so
Parikshit.
much, sir.
It's a
Lovely
pleasure.
talking to you.
Thank you.